Man. Oh. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Malignant Young Puck died inside my chest, ladies and gentlemen. You guys woke me up, man. I was taking a nap. You guys scared me, man. Be nicer than that. Yeah, so we have the round 7 game that I've been waiting on all day between Wesley So versus Sam Shankland. And for all my people in the Philippines, I would say mabuhay. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang araw. Kumusta na aking mga kaibigan? Masaya ko makita kang muli. And maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Hello, you lit. For anybody out there that has seen me before. Yeah, we have Sam Shankland versus Wesley So. So if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. Bam! C4. E5. We see G3. So we have the English opening, and it is the King's English variation. E5 is going to be one of the strongest ways to play against the English. You know, once G3 comes, preparing bishop to G2. C6 is a very solid way of just basically putting like a bunch of pawns in the way and trying to blunt this bishop as much as possible. Kind of similar when you play like Catalan or Slav or something like that, you know. Slav. Anyways, not everybody's gonna get that joke. Somebody's gonna get the joke. I believe in that. Anyway, you know, just to put, you know, kind of blunt this bishop. So knight comes to F3. We see E4, knocking that knight away. Knight comes to D4. We got D5. And this is just very like super solid. You see this gigantic pawn chain trying to say, hey man, don't put your bishop on G2 because that's stupid. Pawn takes D5, queen takes D5. We see knight interestingly coming down in the little bitty nook that it created by the C pawn. Knight to C2. Knight comes to F6. Of course we have knight to C3. Attacking the queen. So the queen sidesteps over to E5. We see bishop to G2. Knight comes to A6. We see castles by white. Bishop comes to E7 and then D4. Which does allow E takes D3 en passant. But the queen takes back, and you can see that, you know, white is doing really good with their development. You know, they're getting everything out. We got castles by black, and then we do have the novelty of the game, which is rook to D1. Super logical move. I mean, you know, you're putting this rook on an open file with the queen. You know, you're kind of thinking about rook coming over here, but, I mean, you can sidestep that because this knight is protecting this rook. So, I mean, you're good to go. And some of you guys might be wondering, you know, can't you, like, okay, so you got the queen, like, right stuck in the center of the board. Like, can't you get a tempo on the queen by, you know, playing, like, bishop to F4 or something? You actually can. It ends up being still roughly about the same because the queen is going to sidestep to H5. So, like, let's just say, for example, we got that on the board. Bishop comes to F4. Queen's going to sidestep to H5. We will have knight to E3 probably. And then knight comes to C5. And then, like, you know, white has tempoed black's queen, but then black is going to tempo white's queen. So, I mean, it's pretty even exchange. I mean, you know, it's pretty even trade-off. So, like I said, we do see rook to D1. Queen comes over to H5 anyway. We see queen to E3. Just making sure that we sidestep any attacks and stuff that we have here. Also, we're trying to place a little attack on the bishop. Rook comes to E8. It's always nice to put a rook opposite a queen. Queen comes to G5. They're like, hey, man, let's trade queens. You know, let me get my bishop out with a tempo. The queen doesn't really have any place to go. So, I mean, you're pretty much forced to trade. Queen takes G5. Bishop takes G5. We see knight up to C7. And then we see bishop to F4. And if we're Wesley So on the white side of this position, we are just really hoping and wishing that Sam Shankland just doesn't pay attention. Because, like, this bishop is threatening this knight. So, maybe he won't notice. No, it's Sam Shankland. He noticed. Bishop, knight came to E6. You know, of course, you know, we were hoping, like, you know, black played something like, let's just do this and, you know, just lose their knight. But, I mean, it's just, we're too high level for that. So after bishop to F4, we do see knight to E6. Bishop comes to D6. King goes to F8. And then we see E4. And it's actually around now that we actually start to see a really severe, like, not severe. Let me take that back. You start to see a pretty, like, serious shift in, you know, the position. And it starts to look really, really nice and juicy for white. We see rook over to D8. And now something kind of has to give. I mean, you either got to trade or move the bishop out of the way. So bishop takes on e7, king takes on e7, and then you do see e5. You have knight back to e8. You got knight up to e3, and then you actually have a5 by Shankland. And this actually allows a really, really nice move. There are a few good moves in the position, but this one move here you can either start with, or it ends up being like in all of the other variations that you see with all of the other moves that you can make. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess that move, go ahead and do so. Okay, so for those of you that like are looking at the queen side, you probably noticed that after a5, it left like a really gigantic hole on b6, right? And that's actually a really like bad problem for black. So we actually saw rook takes d8 in the game by So, which is not a bad move. It's just, you know, this move is just maybe slightly better. Knight to a4. So if you guess knight to a4, you're a genius. Your IQ is like 5,000. Good job. Because you are definitely trying to inconvenience black by putting this knight here. And I mean, you're just like stopping this pawn from moving. This bishop is kind of going to have a hard time developing. You're also going to be hitting the rook. So I mean, it's a lot that black has to try to solve. You know, of course, if black makes a lazy move like g6 or something, you're going to see knight to b6, rook coming down to a6, and then you're going to be looking at knight e to c4. And I mean, these knights are just like really annoying. Like I do not want to have my opponent's knights like this in my position ever. So after knight to a4, you're probably going to see rook to a6, b3, knight coming down to d4, f4, f6, and then knight to c5, you know, throwing a little tickle on that rook. So as you can see, this is a very active position for white. You know, they have all their pieces out. These knights are pretty nicely placed. This bishop is kind of cutting across the board. In contrast to black's pieces, you know, they kind of like on the back rank here. Man, oh, I'm blurry. Okay, hold on, I'm blurry. There we go. Man, I'm trying. Okay, I need to fix that, man, because I don't get blurry as much these days. I usually I'm good. Anyway, and as you guys can see, I mean, black, like I said, black is just kind of really in a defensive position. The only really great piece in their position is the white knight, or the black knight, and you're just constantly getting attacked by black. So this is a really nice initiative position that we would have. But like I said, we did see rook takes d8, knight takes d8, but I mean, we're still solid here as white. Rook comes to d1. We see f6. Pawn takes f6, knight takes f6. We see f4. Bishop comes to e6, f5. Knocking the bishop somewhere. Bishop goes back to d7. We see g4. Knight comes to f7. We have h4, h6. King comes up to f2, and we have rook to g8. And as you guys can see, this position is much different than the position we saw a second ago. You know, the knights have actually kind of improved themselves a little bit. The bishop, you know, didn't move, but it's still doing pretty good. This rook is a little bit more mobile. You know, it's not as defensive and, you know, like back rank as the position was before. So black definitely, you know, is really back in the game in this position. So king comes to g3. We see knight down to d6. We got rook to e1. King comes back to d8. We see rook over to d1, attacking the undefended knight. King comes back to e7. We see rook to e1. King goes back to d8. Rook comes to d1. King comes to e7. And it is actually a draw by threefold repetition. Now, some of you guys might be wondering if we back up here. After the king initially comes to d8, instead of, or even just like after, let's say, you know, you do the repetition and you come back to this position that you see here, right? You do have another possibility. Like, you know, some of you guys might have been sitting there thinking like, well, wait, what about king to f4? Like, doesn't that make some type of progress? I mean, it kind of does just a little bit. So let's look at king to f4. King goes to f4. You see rook over to f8. Rook would come to d1, you know, attacking the undefended knight again. King would come to c7. You see knight to e4. Knight would take on e4. Bishop would take on e4. And then you want to throw a little intermezzo situation in there with, you know, g5. Because after pawn takes g5, the king is going to have to move. King could come to e5. So, I mean, there's a little bit of something going on here. It's still pretty even. But, I mean, this is another, you know, possibility that the game could have kind of, you know, the direction that the game could have kind of went in. I mean, you know, there's several different options. I mean, usually when you get into a repetition, you don't have to just keep going into the repetition. Like, a lot of times you can kind of like, you know, go a whole bunch of different avenues and just keep playing on. But, you know, you never really know. So that is, after this position, like I said, the end of the game. And so Maxime Vachier-Lagrave did win his game against Jeffrey Young. So he's actually leading the tournament right now. So as long as Wesley So pretty much maintains kind of his position in the tournament, he will win the Grand Chess Tour completely and take home like $1 billion. Nah, I'm playing. It's like 190,000 or something like that. It's quite a bit of change though. So I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. All of my people that are coming from the Philippines. I guess Wesley So and Sam Shankland. So let me see if I can say this correctly. Malakas C, Wesley So, at Sam Shankland. Let me know if I said that correct. I kind of like winged it and I was thinking about the words and stuff. I think I might have said that right because at is and, I believe. All right, cool. I'm Makito Tayo Mamaya, and I'll see you guys next time.